Welcome back, everybody. It's Tuesday, May 19th, 2025. Born on this date in 1940, soul singer, songwriter, and piano player Shorty Long of Birmingham. He co-wrote Devil with the Blue Dress On and died at 29 in a boating accident. On the cast today, we have veteran and soon-to-be retired features writer Bob Carlton. For the past couple decades, you've read his reporting on the food beat in Alabama, particularly Central Alabama, but he's done stories on all kinds of people and movies and even Miss Terry Sabin. We'll get into all that. But first, we're going to go ahead and kick off election 2026 because who can wait? Also, we'll briefly look at the Alabama connections in Cash Patel's Fox interview over the weekend and why weather radio may be down during an inopportune time. I'm Mike Morgan, and we're down in Alabama.
Every day, thousands of Comcast engineers and technologists, like Kunle, put people at the heart of everything they create.
In the average household, there are dozens of connected devices. Here in the Comcast family, we're building an integrated in-home Wi-Fi solution for millions of families like my own. It brings people together in meaningful ways.
Kunle and his team are building a Wi-Fi experience that connects 1 billion devices every year. Learn more about how Comcast is redefining the future of connectivity at comcastcorporation.com/Wi-Fi.
In Alabama, it's officially the election 2026 season, at least by one important criteria. That criteria being, reports AL.com's Mike Kaysen, that candidates were able to begin raising campaign money on Monday. Yesterday was exactly 1 year before next year's primary election. The big offices are all up for the taking: governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, secretary of state, and all 140 seats in the Alabama legislature, plus one of Alabama's United States Senate seats. That Senate seat currently belongs to Tommy Tuberville. Now, he's indicated that he might pass over a re-election campaign for a run at the governor's mansion. He'll probably be a solid favorite in either race, but the governor's position is more strict with its residency requirements, and there have been questions raised as to whether Tuberville has truly lived in Alabama for 7 years rather than at one of his homes in Florida, where he voted as recently as 2018. Now, if he does decide to run for governor, he'll leave a big, politically attractive seat to fill. Current Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall said on Alabama Public Television's Capital Journal that he might be interested if it opens up. Marshall has made a splash in his support of President Trump over the past few years and has joined other Republican state attorneys general on several issues of national interest. Already in the race is Democrat Kyle Sweetser, the longtime Republican who voted for Trump twice before turning on him and speaking at the Democratic National Convention. If Tuberville does leave the Senate seat, we might also hear announcements from former Alabama Secretary of State John Merrill and former Alabama Department of Veterans Affairs Commissioner Kent Davis. We'll have to wait on that. At governor, Kay Ivey is term limited out. Lieutenant Governor Will Ainsworth is term limited in his office as well, and he seemingly had an eye on Ivey's job, at least dating back to his announcement in 2022 that he wouldn't try to primary Ivey if she ran for re-election. I mean, there's no need to announce that you're not going to run for a position unless you want to make sure folks know that you might have run for that position. Already bidding to replace Ainsworth as lieutenant governor are current Secretary of State Wes Allen and Opelika Pastor Dean Odle. Now, if you're into political battles, in the event that Merrill has interest in lieutenant governor, we could see a scrap between the past two secretaries of state, who are both conservative Republicans, but apparently not personal allies. Now, you may have heard FBI Director Kash Patel talk about moving FBI workforce out of D.C. during an interview on Fox News Channel over the weekend. And if you were able to regroup after hearing Patel say that Jeffrey Epstein actually killed himself in prison, then a big takeaway for us was Patel's calling Huntsville's Redstone Arsenal, quote, one of the crown jewels of the FBI, and saying that some of the 1,500 workers shipping out of D.C. will be shipping into Alabama. But he also said that they are moving agents and intel folks into higher crime spots across the U.S. AL.com's William Thornton reports that an FBI spokesperson clarified that this does not affect plans already laid out for Redstone. Patel had already ordered the transfer of 500 workers from D.C. to Redstone this calendar year, a number the spokesperson said is still accurate. Patel said earlier this month that 1,400 FBI employees may be headed to Redstone over the next 3 years. On Fox, Patel called the Huntsville base, quote, essentially headquarters 2, for lack of a better word. Well, some stormy weather could work through the state this afternoon and evening, reports AL.com's Lee Morgan. Now, as of this recording, the farther north you are, the more chance you have for severe weather, although thunderstorms will be possible for most of the state. And as always, we're not live, so weather's always subject to change. Check al.com/weather for updates. There's another variable for some folks in the coverage area of the National Weather Service in Birmingham, which stretches from counties such as Marion, Winston, and Cherokee in the north to Marengo, Lowndes, Pike, and Barber in the south. Now, if you live in that big swath of central Alabama and rely on a NOAA weather radio transmitter for updates, you need to find a backup. It'll be off the air and broadcasting a recorded message as the Weather Service undergoes a software upgrade. Affected radio transmitters are in Winfield, Oneonta, Birmingham, Anniston, Tuscaloosa, Demopolis, Selma, Montgomery, Auburn, and Texasville. I'm sorry, but I cannot help pointing out here the irony in weather not cooperating with the Weather Service's plans. Where is a pinpoint long-term forecast when they needed one? Well, watches, warnings, and advisories will not be affected by the work that's being done, and forecast products and weather watches are good to go. It's only the weather radio transmitters that are going offline. During this time, you are encouraged to use good weather apps, local EMA and TV and internet alerts, and if you know somebody who lives where the polygon pops up, it doesn't hurt to give them a call. The work is expected to finish up on Wednesday in time for you to hear it warn you about clear skies and highs near 85. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Bob Carlton. Y'all stay with us.
The spirit of innovation is deeply ingrained in America, and Google is helping Americans innovate in ways both big and small. The Air Force Research Laboratory is partnering with Google Cloud using AI to accelerate defense research for air, space, and cyberspace forces. This is a new era of American innovation. Find out more at g.co/American innovation.
Are you still quoting 30-year-old movies? Have you said cool beans in the past 90 days? Do you think Discover isn't widely accepted? If this sounds like you, you're stuck in the past. Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. And every time you make a purchase with your card, you automatically earn cash back. Welcome to the now. It pays to Discover. Learn more at discover.com/credit card, based on the February 2024 Nielsen report.
Thanks for staying with us, everybody. Today, we're going to be joined by Bob Carlton. He's been on the show before. He's a veteran Alabama features reporter in recent years, notably as a food writer. Bob, welcome back to Down in Alabama Studios.
Hey, good to be back. Thanks for having me here.
Well, they've been saying that you're calling it a career. Can that really be true?
Yeah, it seemed like I've been on I was joking with somebody the other day. It seems like I've been on the Vern Lundquist farewell tour for about 3 months now. So, but yeah, end of May 30th will be my last day here at Alabama Media Group, Birmingham News, AL.com, This is Alabama, all the brands, and now
All the
now
brands.
down in Alabama too. So.
That's right, down in Alabama. We had to get a piece before you got out of here. Um, I see on social media you've been doing a little bit of a tour. You've been eating out a lot. It looks like you've been hitting those hot spots. How's this last couple months been for you as far as getting around and seeing stuff?
Well, you work for the same company, so you know as well as I do. But our company has really made me feel valued. Feel valued all the time, but especially this last couple of months, and the people that I work with and for, and people are right about. It's just
Mhm.
been a real rewarding time. My whole career has been a real rewarding career for me, and especially these last couple of months as I kind of reconnect with people that I work with and have written about, and it's just been a lot of fun. I'll tell you a quick inside story about how that whole quote unquote farewell tour came about, but some of my longtime colleagues here that John Archibald, Carol Robinson, Greg Garrison, Kent Falk, and Tamika Moore. Uh,
Mhm.
we've well, Tamika hasn't been here quite as long as we have, but everybody in that group has been here 40 or close to 40 years or more. And anyway, so John called me one day or texted me and said, "Hey, when we're getting together for Bob's farewell lunch?" And I said, "Well, John, I'm not leaving until for another 2 or 3 months." And he said, "No time like the present." So we all met at uh, the fish market with George Saris, and George told a lot of stories. We told a lot of stories, and anyway, so kind of that's how it kind of all started, and I've had little bit of fun with it.
It
So
sounds like John might have been really hungry that day. Hey, let's
yeah,
do it now.
probably so. But
Well,
but
I,
I have 2 more weeks, so I'm open. I'm open for lunch if anybody wants to DM me, as they say.
there you go. How many years have you been in the media business?
Well, it's funny. Uh, I started here I started at the Birmingham News as a summer intern my senior year, going into my senior year at Alabama. So I started on May 14th, 1979 was my employment date. So I've been with the company this month marks 46 years. So, and prior to that, I wrote for the school paper at Alabama,
Mhm.
Crimson White, but as a real paid
Yeah.
professional journalist since 1979.
Yeah, and that's remarkable because the Birmingham News was always a destination newspaper, and to get there at a young age is great. What a great experience!
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I had a college professor, and I would like to give him a shout out, Ed Mullins, and he had a lot of belief in me, and he supported me. And when the Birmingham News came looking for summer interns that year, he championed my cause and put in a good word for me. And that internship worked out, and I ended up working some. Even my senior year of college, I worked some on the weekends. That was back in the days when we had a copy desk, and I worked on the
That's right.
copy desk and editing stories, putting headlines on stories. I mean, I go uh, far enough back where we actually had to look up the word in a dictionary when we were editing a story, and I had to that word looks funny, and then reach on the shelf and pull the dictionary. And if it was a really hard word, I had to go back into the library, or the morgue as we called it, and
Mhm.
they had one of these big old dictionaries that looked like the New York City telephone book, which is another thing that's not around anymore either. But so yeah, but anyway, so I started on the copy desk and did that, and then I was fortunate enough when I graduated, they had an opening, and so been here ever since. So
Yeah, you say dictionary, but the AP style book back then was an actual book and not a Twitter account that everybody argues with.
yeah, I miss the AP style book, but
Well, eventually you transitioned into a reporting job. Do you remember your first uh, Birmingham News byline?
well, I even when I was working on the copy desk that summer, as college students are prone to be, I was real into music at the time, and I had a editor, Garland Reeves, who eventually became an editor for a long time, but he
Mhm.
edited the entertainment section, the weekend entertainment section, and part of my copy editing duties was to help, read some of the stories for that section. And so I said, hey, let me write some record reviews or album reviews, and so started doing that for him. So I wrote a few, entertainment related stories all
Mhm.
along, but I guess one of the stories that's I know it wasn't my first story, but I think it was on page one. But one that I remember um, when I went to the news side was a piece that it was just like a press conference type story. But George McMillan, who later founded City Stages, but at the time was Lieutenant Governor of Alabama, came to Birmingham to tout a solar energy bill that had either just passed or he was proposing, and I went to cover it, and I was surprised the next day that it was on the front page. So
Hey.
I think that was my first page one byline, but you know, that's been 45 years ago, so I'm not quite sure.
And that's a big thing for folks who've never been in the newspaper business. You get on 1A when you get a piece of that, you know that you are, big time.
I thought they were just being kind to me, it was like, oh, it's his first story. We're going to put it on page one for him, so make him feel good. So who knows?
What are some of your favorite stories through the years that you've done on all the beats?
Well, my current editor, Haley Lawrence, had just asked me to kind of put together a list of some of my favorites. So I've been going back through the archives and digging some up, but a couple that jumped to mind from way back in 1987 was the 10th anniversary of the crash, the Leonard Skinner plane crash, and I had interviewed Gary Rossington from Leonard Skinner and Jimmy Johnson from the Swampers, Muscle Shoals
Mhm.
rhythm section, and so I had interviewed them about a year before for a different project that they were working on, and I mentioned something to Gary about, hey, the anniversary of the crash is coming up in a year. I'd like to do something on it, and ended up spending a lot of time doing a lot of that. Was back in the day where you had to send off to get records in the mail, and I got some national traffic uh, safety transportation board
Right.
report on the flight, and I talked to some of the survivors, and I talked to some of the people one of the farmers who actually kind of came and helped rescue the people that were on the
Oh
flight.
yeah.
And anyway, I spent a lot of time on that and recreating what happened that night. And that story ran in 1987. A few years later, I did a series of stories. It was three stories on a young man named Billy Cox. He was diagnosed with AIDS. This was in 1994, and
Mhm.
AIDS at that time was still pretty much a death sentence. And I had met him working on another story, and kind of heard his backstory, and I thought he would be a fascinating profile. he agreed to let me follow him and Joe Songer, one of our photographers that everybody knows well, and Joe and I followed him for. Unfortunately, his time with us was very brief. After I met him, we followed him for the last 6 months of his life and wrote, a series of stories about his experience. And anyway, it was very impactful, and he was very gracious about allowing us kind of inside his circle. Um, so, and on a happier note,
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the time, that was like you said, it was a little different. We were still learning stuff. It was still a death sentence. I think Magic Johnson had already been diagnosed, and
yeah,
for
yeah.
a lot of people, he was like the first. Hey, wait a minute. Some people are surviving this.
The whole idea was to kind of personalize it and not,
Yeah.
make him, to for people to get to know him, and I think it was really effective. I mean,
Hmm.
we were there for his funeral, and Joe just got some phenomenal photos, which helped bring the story to life a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, on a happier note, fast forward some more to 2006. What's this? Seven, right? That when Nick Saban was hired.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
2007.
so Hunter George, who was our executive editor at the time, asked me to do a profile on Terry Saban. This was after, a few months after he had been hired, and it was leading into his first season. So anyway, I said, sure, I'd love to do it. And so I had to go through all the university channels to try to get her, and they kept putting me off and putting me off. And then finally, I was told that she wouldn't be available to talk to me. And
Uh,
as Hunter rightly said, well, we're doing the profile anyway. So I had to do a lot of reporting through people who knew her, and I remembered interviewing a lady who ran a clothing boutique in Baton Rouge where they worked. I mean, where he coached, and
mhm.
people like that kind of knew him on a personal level. And so I'd kind of the story was rolling right along without her, and then I found out she was speaking at a Big Brothers Big Sisters benefit in Tuscaloosa, and I called the Big Brothers Big Sisters chairperson and talked to her, and she was just telling me how gracious the Sabins had been and this, that, and the other. And I said,
Mhm.
"Hey, do you think there's a chance I could come to y'all's event where she's speaking and just maybe try to talk to her there?" And she said, "Sure, come on." And so ended up going and sitting with her, and she was perfectly charming, as you would imagine, and
Uh-huh.
got a lot of good stuff from her, and even got Coach Saban on the phone at some point. So
Congratulations on that.
it turned out that I do remember when it was the one and only time I've ever talked to him, but he said, "If you ever need anything else, just let us know."
And
But
that's the last contact he ever had with local reporters.
but so anyway, the story turned out great. It all worked out, and the little footnote was that I even got a personalized thank you note from her after it ran. Uh, so it went
That's
from her
awesome.
not being available to talk to me to
Right.
her sending me a thank you note. So I
Yeah, the
felt,
word "no" is what comes first from
yeah,
college football
yeah.
programs. I love that going through folks in Baton Rouge who really knew her. That
And more kind of recently, but one that popped up again recently was David McGee, who was one of our former editors
hmm.
here,
Yeah.
and he asked me to do a story on the 40th anniversary of the famous Banks Woodlawn High School football game at Legion Field, and kind of do a recreate the story, what that was like, talk to some of the participants and fans who went to the game and all that. And it was a really short deadline too, because it was coming up, and I had a couple of weeks. I mean, for me that's short, but some people that are faster than me, that's a long time. But anyway, so I did this story about the Banks Woodlawn game, and that it's still. I mean, I can still see. We have a system that tracks our page views, as you know, but and so the 50th anniversary came up this past fall, back in
Hmm.
2024, and so I just reposted my old story on Facebook, and it just took off
Oh
again,
yeah.
and we ended up sharing it on the 10-year-old story. But that's another one that I think people kind of kind of remember over the years. And I don't want to bore you with going too far down memory lane, but
No, none of this is boring.
but on a foods from a food standpoint, I started covering food full time as in restaurants when Joellen O'Hara retired in 2008. She was our longtime food editor and a great mentor to me.
Hmm.
And so anyway, I started writing about food and restaurants pretty exclusively, but not, I still did some other things. But so anyway, as such, I covered the James Beard Awards for 10 years and as you know, for 9 of those years, Highlands Bar and Grill was nominated for the best restaurant in America and never won and never won and never won and never won. And finally in 2018, it was like a double header sweep because Lester Miles won for Outstanding Pastry Chef that night, and then Highlands, after 10 years being nominated, finally won for Best Restaurant in America. And it was a big moment for Birmingham, because
Yeah.
Birmingham had been rooting for this restaurant all these years, and to be
Hmm.
be there and to have followed that story and to be there when they finally won it was a really special moment. So because Highlands was up against restaurants from New York, San Francisco, Chicago, all these years,
Right.
and a little restaurant in Birmingham, Alabama to win it was really special for the city, and it was special to be there.
Well, it seems like that kind of opened up the door for consideration for Alabama restaurants. Is that true?
Yeah, yeah. In fairness, Frank Stitt and Chris Hastings had won chef awards before, regional chef awards,
Okay.
not a
Okay.
national award. And then after that, Adam Evans won for best chef in 2022. Yeah, I wouldn't say it necessarily opened the door, but it certainly made the spotlight a lot brighter. That's a fair thing to say for sure.
Right. Right. What other superlatives? Let's see. Do you have a favorite interview that you've ever done?
Come back to me on that one. I mean,
um,
because I can't think of one right off the top of my head.
right. Right.
Come at the end, come back to it, and we'll ask me that again. And
Okay.
can I say something else?
Sure. Yeah.
So one story that is really particularly near and dear to my heart, from covering the food beat, I wrote and still do write a lot about the Bright Star, which is the oldest restaurant in Alabama, in Bessemer, and I got to know Jimmy Corkis very well from the Bright Star. He and his brother Nicky ran it for since the 1960s. Their father ran it before them,
Mhm.
and anyway, I got a call from Jimmy Koikas in 2019, and he said, come out to the restaurant. I want to talk to you about something. And he had found out he was dying of cancer, and he said, I want you to write my obituary. And it was a really sweet story. He knew he was dying, but he wanted someone to tell his story before he died and or
Mhm.
when he died, and he trusted me to do it, and that was quite
Mhm.
an honor. And he gave me all these names of people to call, and I talked to Gene Stallings, and I talked to Bill Battle, and I talked to some of his customers, and
Mhm.
to his family members, and so. I had a story that I wrote, had written and worked on months in advance that had written in preparation for when he died, and then when I got that phone call, it was a Saturday of an Alabama Mississippi State game, and so I got that phone call from Tommy Ford, who at the University of Alabama, but who was also a close friend of the Koikis family, and he called and told me, and then I confirmed it from another family member, and we published it that morning. But it was really special that he got to he trusted me to write that story, and
Yeah, really.
it was. And it was, I mean, I had lots of details in it. It was one of my favorite things I've ever, in a bittersweet way, it was one of my favorite things that I've
Yeah.
ever worked on. So,
Yeah, we'll link to that in show notes. Yeah, that speaks volumes to have a guy do that. And Bright Star, for people who don't know, is it the oldest operating restaurant?
there's a little debate about whether it or Golden Rule Barbecue is, but
Okay.
in its current location, family owned Alabama business, the Bright Star has been in the same family for ever since it opened. So most people consider the Bright Star the oldest, but Golden Rule can make an argument too.
Okay. Okay. And you know, speaking of people who just admire your work and step up and do something like that, I know I've also seen your stories cut out of the newspaper, hanging on bulletin boards in really proud restaurants.
You don't see that as much anymore, do you?
I was gonna say, does anyone print out stories off the internet and hang them on their bulletin board?
Yeah, most of those you see now, they kind of yellowed over the years, but and that's one thing I miss about the print edition for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. Oh, you talked about this a little bit, but what are some of the biggest changes you saw being a reporter? I mean, the biggest adaptations you've had to make to survive through the years.
Well, you were here, right, in 2012?
Yes,
Yeah, I would
I was
say
in Birmingham.
I would say without question, it was when uh, the Birmingham News went from a 7 days a week print edition to 3 days a week and a digital first media operation in 2012. And we did it with a reduced staff. Unfortunately, there was a lot of staff members who were downsized, and it was kind of a real turbulent time, I guess,
Hmm.
for the industry, for the Birmingham News in particular. But we persevered, and made it through, because it was I would say that whole year was a really really hard transition. But the company we're with now, I'm so proud of all the work that we've done, and all the Pulitzer prizes that our uh, investigative reporters have won, and all the great work they continue to do. So I think we're as strong as ever. And I'm not saying that because um, I'm working here and I'm leaving. I'm saying it because it's true. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. What do you have to gain, right, or
yeah.
lose? Well, I can't let you get out of here without some food picks. I think last time I peppered you with every detail. Hey, if I'm on Highway 231 and I feel like barbecue, but do you have some summer picks for us? We're almost to Memorial Day, so we need to be thinking about vacation dining.
Well, one place that I went to recently, I was down in Orange Beach a couple of weeks ago, and if you've never been to Voyagers, it's in the Perdido Beach Resort. Um, so it's part of a resort, but anybody can go and eat there. Uh, but it's just a really excellent um, Gulf seafood focused restaurant. Chef there
Mm,
named Brody Olive, and Brody actually won the national seafood cook-off um, a few years ago, and he's one of the best chefs in the state. And
okay, Voyagers.
yeah, And when you go get the mac and cheese, I know you're there for the seafood, but get the mac and cheese. They do a blue cheese mac and cheese with bacon from Billy's Bacon in Fairhope, and it is unbelievable. It's unbelievably good. Strawberries are in season this time. It's peak strawberry season.
Uh,
But unfortunately, we've had a lot of rain lately, and it's kind of put a damper on the strawberries. But we're in the middle of strawberry season, peach season. Even though some of them are already out, we'll hit peach season, peak peach season. Say that 3 times in a row. We'll be hitting that in June or so, and looking forward to that. That's what I love about summers in Alabama. How you go from late spring, you go from strawberries to early midsummer. You go to peaches, and then you get into heirloom tomatoes, and then toward the fall, it's pear season. So it's fun watching the seasons evolve.
yeah, and the speaking of, you mentioned heirloom tomatoes, but the tomato salad at Hot and Hot's being served.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that. Oh yeah, everybody needs to get out and get that tomato salad. We have some friends that we get together with for dinner, and the last 2 or 3 years we've gotten together, and right at the beginning of the Hot and Hot tomato salad season to celebrate the kickoff of tomato salad season. But the thing about it is it gets better as the summer goes on, because he starts out with Florida tomatoes, and then as the summer progresses, he moves on to Alabama heirloom tomatoes. So that's when it really hits its stride. So
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, because mine aren't even in the ground yet. They're still in the little pots.
see, now I admire you. You actually grow some of your own vegetables, and I just eat them. I don't grow them. So maybe that'll be my new hobby.
On the internet, sometimes you see on social media where people do nostalgic posts of, hey, we want to bring this back, or we that back, this TV show or whatever. What are some restaurants you'd like to bring back if you could?
Well, for nostalgic reasons, there was a restaurant downtown that we used to go and eat lunch, where we used to go and eat lunch a lot. It's called La Paris, and
Okay.
they had a chicken, baked chicken that was just kind of a Greek style chicken that was really good. In a similar vein, the old John's restaurant that was downtown for all these years.
Yeah.
Certainly missed that one.
Speaking of
Um,
mac and cheese, yeah,
yeah,
those are two really good ones.
yeah.
Well, so what are in the retirement plans, or is retirement plans an oxymoron?
Well, it's a good question. The first thing I'm going to do, my wife and I are going to France, to Normandy, on a World War II D-Day trip that follows the Easy Company from the Band of Brothers HBO miniseries that follows their route from Normandy into Belgium and Luxembourg, and winds up at Eagle's Nest. And it's like a 11-day trip. And so that's the first thing we're going to do. And then,
What a great trip.
yeah, it's been on my bucket list for a while. And then after that, I'm just going to just figure out what to do with my time. But I want to do some volunteer work, and I still want to write some.
Yeah.
I have the opportunity, and I believe I'm going to take advantage of it to continue to do some freelance writing for the company on a kind of limited basis. So you might not see the end of my byline. So I may be back on the site again on a very sporadic basis in a couple of 3 months after I take some time off.
Okay. Good, because we'll have a reason to get you back on here, maybe.
Let me think on that question you were asking me about my favorite interview. Golly.
Yeah. That's a tough one to pull out of out of the years.
Well, one that jumps to mind for me is it was just a cool experience. But back in my movie reviewing days, which I did that for a number of years, so some people might remember me from those days. But when the movie Saving Private Ryan came out, they got to interview Stephen Ambrose, who wrote the books that Saving Private Ryan was based upon, and Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks, who obviously starred in it. And it was a not a group interview. It was me and another reporter. So it was two of us interviewing them in Atlanta. They were on a promotional tour for the film, and that's one of my all-time favorite movies.
Yeah.
And to get to interview them and sit across the table from them and talk to them. Again, it wasn't one-on-one, but it was pretty close to it. So
yeah,
that was a huge thing. But you're asking me about favorite interviews, but that's like a star interview. But I mean, it'd be hard to pick a favorite, but I really enjoy the thing I enjoy most about my job is that I get to meet everyday people who do everyday but remarkable things, and unsung heroes, if you like. And you get to interview them and hear their stories, and some of them I've become friends with through writing about them. Because they're just nice people, neat people you'd like to know better. And I mean, I couldn't pick one person from that, but there are dozens of people like that I met and continue to meet. That's the good thing about my job. I tell people the good thing about my job is that I get to meet interesting people that I wouldn't meet otherwise and get to tell their stories. The bad thing is that I have to move on to the next story, and I sometimes lose contact with them.
Right.
So that's another thing I wanted. You were asking me at one point. You were asking me what I wanted to do in retirement, and I want to reconnect with some of the people I've written about over the years and lost contact with. So,
hey, you did a story on me in 1986.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, great reflections. Great points. All right, Bob. Well, thanks so much for coming in and doing this. I'm really proud to have you, and I've loved your work over the years. I've loved getting to work with it because I was on some of those copy and design desks.
I would say those were the good old days, but these are good old days too, aren't they?
They're all good old days if you come to it with the right
Yeah.
attitude.
Yeah.
That's how you survive in this business. Well, yeah, thanks, Bob. Thanks so much. And thanks everybody out there for listening to us today. We're going to be back here again in the morning. Until then, y'all come by and see us anytime you want to. We're on the World Wide Web at al.com.